The health inspector arrived at Le Bernardin at exactly 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in October. Marcus Thompson was in the middle of perfecting his signature dish, seared foie gras with cherry reduction, when the kitchen doors swung open and his world collapsed. "Health department," announced the stern woman with the clipboard. But Marcus barely heard her. He was staring at the rat that had just scurried across his pristine stainless steel counter, right in front of the inspector's horrified gaze. Within hours, Le Bernardin was shut down. Within days, the story had spread through every food blog, restaurant review site, and social media platform in New York City. Michelin star restaurant closed for severe health violation. The photos were everywhere. Rats, moldy produce, filthy storage areas that Marcus had somehow overlooked in his obsession with creating perfect dishes for wealthy clientele. Marcus Thompson, once hailed as the Mozart of Manhattan cuisine, watched his empire crumble from his apartment window. The phone calls from investors stopped. His television show was canceled. His cookbook deal evaporated. Even his girlfriend Claire packed her bags, unable to look at him without disgust. "You got so caught up in being famous that you forgot the basics," she said on her way out. Food safety isn't glamorous, but it's everything. 6 months later, Marcus was living in his car. The lawsuits had taken everything: the restaurant, the apartment, his savings. His once manicured hands were now calloused and dirty. His designer chef's coat had been replaced by whatever clothes he could find at the Salvation Army. He parked behind a dumpster near the financial district, trying to sleep despite the October chill seeping through the broken window seal. That's when he heard the voice. "Hey, you okay in there?" Marcus looked up to see an older black man with graying hair and kind eyes peering through his car window. The man wore a worn military jacket and carried a small backpack. "I'm fine," Marcus lied, though he clearly wasn't. "Name's Frank," the man said. "Frank William. I've been living rough for about 3 years now. You look new to this." Marcus wanted to drive away, but his car had run out of gas 2 days ago. "Marcus," he muttered. "Well, Marcus, there's a place about 6 blocks from here where we can get a hot meal. Community church runs it. You hungry?" Marcus's stomach answered before he could. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. Too proud to beg and too broke to buy food. The soup kitchen was in a church basement, fluorescent lights, folding tables, and a line of people that stretched up the stair. Marcus had walked past places like this hundreds of times when he lived in his penthouse, never giving them a second thought. Now he was part of that line. "First time?" asked the volunteer behind the serving counter, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. She ladled a generous portion of beef stew into a styrofoam container, added a piece of bread, and handed it to him with the same respect she'd shown every person before him. The stew was simple, nothing like the complex reductions in molecular gastronomy he used to create. But it was warm, filling, and made with care. As he ate, Marcus watched the volunteers. They didn't look at the homeless clients with pity or judgment. They saw people who needed a meal, nothing more. Frank sat across from him. "Good food," Frank said between bites. "It's basic," Marcus replied, his culinary training making him automatically critique the dish. Frank looked at him curiously. "You know about cooking?" "I used to." Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. "Used to be a line cook?" Marcus almost laughed at the irony. Something like that. Over the following weeks, Frank became Marcus's guide to street life. Frank had been an army cook in Afghanistan before PTSD and addiction cost him his job, his family, and eventually his home. But unlike Marcus, Frank carried no bitterness. "The streets teach you what matters," Frank explained one cold evening as they shared a can of soup heated over a small camping stove. "It ain't about impressing anyone, it's about surviving, helping each other survive. How do you stay so positive?" "Marcus," Frank stirred the soup thoughtfully. "I learned something in the army. Food isn't just fuel, it's dignity. When someone's hungry and you feed them with respect, you're giving them more than calories. You're saying they matter." Marcus thought about his years in high-end restaurants, where he'd obsessed over presentation and technique while treating his staff poorly and looking down on simple food. He'd lost sight of why he'd started cooking in the first place. Because food brought people together. One evening, Marcus noticed Frank wasn't eating much of his soup kitchen dinner. When he asked why, Frank admitted he'd been feeling sick but didn't want to take up space at the free clinic. "The food here is good," Frank said, "but it's not exactly what a sick person needs. Lots of sodium, not much fresh vegetables. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for it, but sometimes I miss the healing foods my grandmother used to make when I was sick as a kid." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Frank's words and about all the people in that soup kitchen line who might need more than just calories. They might need nutrition tailored to their specific health challenges. The next morning, Marcus approached Sister Catherine, who ran the soup kitchen. "I have a background in cooking," he said carefully. "I wonder if I could help prepare meals here. Maybe bring some variety to the menu." Sister Catherine looked skeptical. "We have volunteers who help with food prep. Do you have experience with large-scale cooking?" Marcus almost mentioned Le Bernardin, but caught himself. That life was over. "I know how to cook for people who need good food," he said instead. She handed him an apron. "Show me." Marcus started small. He convinced Sister Catherine to let him use some of their budget to buy fresh vegetables at the wholesale market. Instead of the usual beef stew, he made a hearty vegetable soup with lentils, carrots and spinach. Nutritious, filling and gentle on sensitive stomachs. The response was immediate. People came back for seconds. They asked what was different about the soup. Frank winked at Marcus from across the kitchen. "You've been holding out on me," Frank said. "You weren't just a line cook, were you?" Marcus continued volunteering, gradually introducing healthier options. He made diabetic-friendly meals for the growing number of homeless diabetics. He prepared easily digestible foods for elderly clients with dental problems. He created high-protein options for people trying to get back on their feet physically. But more importantly, he listened. He learned that Maria had been living in her car since her landlord raised rent beyond what her fixed income could cover. He discovered that James was a veteran like Frank, struggling with PTSD but too proud to ask for help. He met Sarah, a young woman who'd aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. Each person had a story, and Marcus began tailoring his cooking not just to nutritional needs, but to emotional ones too. Comfort foods that reminded people of home. Cultural dishes that honored their heritage. Special birthday meals for people who thought no one remembered they existed. Word spread through the homeless community. More people started coming to the church soup kitchen. Sister Catherine was amazed by the increase in attendance and the improvement in people's health and spirit. "Marcus," she said one evening, as they cleaned up, "I don't know what your background is, but you understand food in a way that goes beyond cooking. You understand people." 3 months into his volunteer work, Marcus was preparing lunch when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Marcus Thompson, oh my God, is that really you?" He turned to see David Kim, a food blogger who used to frequent Le Bernardin. David's expression shifted from recognition to shock as he took in Marcus's appearance. The worn clothes, the calloused hands, the soup kitchen set. Marcus's first instinct was shame. Here was someone from his old life, seeing him at his lowest point. But then he looked around at the people he was serving. Frank, Maria, James, Sarah, and dozens of others who had become family to him. "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "It's..." David's camera was already out. Marcus knew this moment would be on social media within minutes. "Chef Thompson serving at a soup kitchen. This is incredible. Are you doing this as community service? Part of your comeback?" "No," Marcus said, continuing to ladle soup. "I'm doing this because these people need good food, and I know how to cook." David looked confused. "But surely this is temporary. Are you planning to reopen? New restaurant concept?" Marcus handed a bowl to an elderly man who thanked him with genuine warmth. "David, for the first time in years, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The blog post went viral, but not in the way Marcus expected. Instead of mockery, he received messages of support. Former colleagues reached out, not with job offers but with requests to volunteer alongside him. Culinary students asked if they could learn from him at the soup kitchen. One morning, Marcus arrived at the church to find a line of people waiting, but these weren't clients. They were chefs, students and food enthusiasts who wanted to help. "We read about what you're doing," said one young chef. "We want to learn how to cook with purpose, not just for profit." Sister Catherine pulled Marcus aside. "This is getting bigger than our little kitchen can handle, but the need is definitely there. Would you be open to expanding?" Within 6 months, Marcus had helped establish 3 additional community kitchens across the city, each one focused not just on feeding people, but on treating them with dignity. The kitchens became gathering places where people shared stories, found resources, and built community. Frank, whose health had improved dramatically on the nutritious meals, became Marcus's assistant manager. Maria found stable housing and started volunteering to help others navigate the housing system. James connected with veteran services and was working toward mental health treatment. 1 year after the health inspector had shut down Le Bernardin, Marcus stood in his new kitchen, not a restaurant, but the flagship community kitchen he now managed. It wasn't glamorous, but it fed over 300 people daily with nutritious, respectful meals. A young reporter asked him if he missed his old life. Marcus looked around at his team of volunteers, at Frank teaching a culinary student how to make soup that would sit well on a sensitive stomach, at the line of people waiting not just for food but for the dignity and community they found in this space. I spent years creating beautiful dishes for people who already had everything, Marcus said. Now I cook simple food for people who need everything. I've never been more proud of what I do. The reporter pressed further. But surely you missed the prestige, the recognition. Marcus smiled, thinking of the grandmother who'd told him yesterday that his vegetable soup reminded her of her mother's cooking, or the teenager who'd asked him to teach her to cook so she could take care of her younger siblings. Recognition. Every day, people tell me my food made them feel human again. What recognition could be more meaningful than that? That evening, as Marcus and Frank cleaned up the kitchen together, Frank said, "You know what I think?" "What's that?" "I think sometimes we have to lose everything to find out what we're really worth." Marcus nodded, hanging up his apron, not a designer chef's coat, but a simple canvas apron stained with honest work. On the wall hung a photo from the soup kitchen's first anniversary celebration, showing dozens of people who'd found not just meals, but community and hope in this humble kitchen. He'd lost his restaurant, his fame, and his fortune, but he'd found something more valuable: the knowledge that real cooking isn't about impressing people with your skill. It's about nourishing them with your care. And for the first time since that health inspector walked through his doors, Marcus Thompson knew exactly who he was supposed to be.